So let's talk about a real head-scratcher coming out of Cape Town. It's a city that's putting in a ton of work, but some of its most important numbers are actually going backward. It's a paradox, right? It shows how progress and pressure can create this fascinating puzzle. And you know what? We're going to solve it together.
And this really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. It's such a counterintuitive idea, isn't it? I mean, what happens when you're running as fast as you can, putting in all the effort, only to look up and realize you've somehow lost ground? It feels impossible. But the answer? Well, it starts with some really surprising numbers.
Okay, so check this out. What you're looking at here is the percentage of informal settlements in Cape Town that were meeting the city's basic standard for water service. In 2021, they were at a pretty solid 85%. But then, just 1 year later, bam! It drops all the way down to 74%. That's an 11-point drop in a single year. So, what on earth happened?
All right, to even begin to understand a drop like that, we first have to get a handle on the incredible pressure the city is under. And that whole story really kicks off with just how fast it's been growing.
Okay, get this. By 2022, Cape Town's population had swelled to over 4.75 million people. I mean, to put that into perspective for you, that's more people than live in the entire country of New Zealand. That is just a massive, massive number of residents for any city to manage and try to provide basic services for.
And it's not just the sheer size of the population, it's the incredible pace of the growth. Just between 2021 and 2022, a single year, the population shot up by 1.65%. Now I know what you're thinking. That percentage sounds kind of small, right? But for a city pushing 5 million people, that translates to tens of thousands of new people showing up, needing a place to live, needing services, every single year.
And here's where the rubber really meets the road. All that growth, it translated into roughly 26,000 new households being created in just 1 year. Just stop and think about that for a second. Every single one of those households needs a place to live, and they need immediate access to things like clean water.
So, okay, we've got this huge population boom on our hands. The next logical question has to be, where are all these new households actually going? And believe me, the answer to that gets us way closer to solving this whole paradox.
Yeah, this growth isn't exactly happening in fancy new high-rise apartments downtown. No, it's happening, and it's super visible, in the rapid expansion of the city's informal settlements. We're talking about new communities just springing up all over the city's edges, and the ones that are already there are getting more and more crowded at a pace that is just, well, it's almost impossible to keep up with.
Now, remember that 74% number we saw a minute ago? To really get what that means, we need to know what the city is actually aiming for. What's their goal? Well, here it is. Their official standard is to provide at least one communal water tap for every 25 households. And that tap has to be within a 100-meter walk. So that's the benchmark. That's the yardstick they're using to measure their own success.
And look, the city is not burying its head in the sand here. Not at all. In their own official documents, this explosion in what they call informality is classified as a high strategic risk level. So they are completely aware that this is a critical, maybe even a city-defining challenge.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got a booming city, and we've got informal settlements expanding like crazy. This brings us right back to that core puzzle, right? How in the world do we square the city's efforts with that big drop in service coverage?
I mean, it's the most obvious question, isn't it? If the percentage of people with water access went down, then the city must have done less, right? Surely they scaled back or installed fewer taps or something.
But the answer, and this is wild, is no. Absolutely not. And this is the real heart of the paradox. The city's own data shows that during that exact same period, they actually increased the number of communal taps they were providing. They were doing more, not less.
So, how is that even possible? Well, this right here really breaks it down. You've got two sides to this coin. On one side, you have the city's effort. They're putting in more taps. They're working hard. But on the other side, you have this overwhelming reality, an absolute tidal wave of new settlements creating this incredible new demand. Remember what we said earlier? They were running forward as fast as they could, but the finish line was just moving away even faster.
So let's just spell out those two key factors that were outpacing everything the city could do. First, like we've been saying, the sheer volume of new settlements was just off the charts. The demand was overwhelming. You're adding taps, sure, but you're adding new households way, way faster. But then there's the second piece, and this is really important. The city also started counting more people.
They expanded how they defined informality to include folks living in backyarder structures, basically extra dwellings built in the backyards of existing properties. Suddenly, you have this huge, previously uncounted population in the denominator of your equation, which of course is going to bring that overall service percentage down.
So there you have it. The paradox is solved. It wasn't about a lack of effort at all. It was a classic case of demand just massively, unbelievably outstripping supply. But that just raises a whole new question, doesn't it? What does a city do when it's faced with a reality like this?
Well, the city's response is what you might call a strategic pivot. Basically, the leadership is telling every single department, listen up, you have to fundamentally rethink how you deliver services. The old models, the old ways of doing things, they just aren't going to cut it anymore, not with this level of pressure.
And this isn't just some vague idea or a nice-sounding memo either. The city is formally tracking all of this through what they call their organizational performance management system. They're trying to use actual real-time data to make sure their goals and their strategies line up with the reality that's changing so fast on the ground.
You know, when you really look at it, this whole Cape Town paradox isn't just a local story. Not at all. It's really a snapshot of a huge global challenge, and it forces all of us to ask a much, much bigger question. As cities all over the world urbanize faster than ever before, how must our very idea of what a service even is? How must that evolve to keep up?